Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Data Engineering Bytes again. I'm Anup Sethuram, and I'm going to talk about Bookmate, share my knowledge on how I built this app. It's more of an AI assistant that help you to, converse with your books. Before we dive in, again, a quick show of hands. How many of you have played with LLMs? Okay, good. Fair bit of talk. Okay, this talk is going to cover the full stack of building LLM applications. I hope I do justice, and I hope everyone in this room can take something out of the talk. Okay, let's get started. About me, I'm a senior data engineer working at Foxtel for the MLOps team, and in the last 1 year, I've been curious about LLMs and ML applications. So you can find more of my work over here in noopsy.github.io. And you can connect with the QR code over here there. Okay, so let's talk why Bookmate. So imagine you're reading a lot of philosophy books in your spare time over a period of time. And then you happen to come across an important concept of dealing with difficult people. And down the lane, at some point in time, you actually face that issue. And then remember, like going back to those books, you don't sort of remember where it is, or probably you would have forgotten whether it was Marcus who wrote that or Seneca who wrote that, and you wanted to get that thought, or you wanted to revisit that particular thing. It's a hard thing. Books are hard, they're dense, and we tend to forget. So not only does Bookmate help you to do summarization and insights, but it also helps you to search multi-books. Imagine the second scenario where you're doing some deep research, or maybe you're studying on some particular topic, and you want to compare different viewpoints and get new insights about it. So you have read a few books and you want to, just compare around books. So what do? I mean, you can just give it to Bookmate and you can start comparing different ideas. What does Marcus think about virtue in terms of what Hegel thinks about it? So that's why Bookmate exists, and we can instantly, find answers with that. So you can also tell that there are, LLMs out there, ChatGPTs, and even Notebook LLM as a agentic AI. Why don't we use them? The primary thing that separates this is open source, and you can have it self-hosted on your laptop, and you can play with your own ideas in books. Okay, and today's roadmap for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to touch on fundamentals. We're talking about LLMs, RAGs, and search. And then I'm going to talk how to build an AI assistant with agents and MCP. And then we'll look at Bookmate's architecture, and then we'll go to the demo. Yeah, and when we have time, we'll look into the future of Bookmate and what are the learnings, challenges that we have. And I'd love to have some contributions over the open source project, and we'll take up any question and answers section we have. Yeah. Fair enough. Let's dive into the foundations. LLMs are incredibly powerful. They're good at reasoning, they're good at comprehension, right? And they can do the summarization. Also, these days, we have fast inferences with models like Gemini 3 and on, and even ChatGPT 5.1, and they have the thinking versions of it where you want to do more of a reasoning. But clearly, they have their own limitations too. So we often miss out on context, and the knowledge is frozen. They don't remember what's the last book that they've got into. I'm sorry. And they hallucinate they hallucinate confidently without you knowing that they're hallucinating, actually. And there is limit to the amount of tokens that you can send to an LLM. You can't just pass in whole database as a context and get the information. And even if you happen to do that, you will not get the answer that you're wanting to, right? So while LLMs can talk a lot about books, but they can't rely answering the question without the external context. So we have the foundational models given us by the big players, Meta, Google, Anthropic. So they are the ones who can train on billions of parameters and providers. They have the infra. That was pure innovation, what we got as LLMs. But when companies want to adopt this, or when you and I as a user wants to develop an application, we go to the second strategy, that is with the engineering approach. So fine-tuning is one of the methods where a company can adapt an LLM to their specific domain. Say, consider a company is working on healthcare and they want the LLM to understand technical terms. So they can have a supervised layer on top of the model that they already have, they've chosen, and build and make it understand the technical, the healthcare terms. But they are also rigid in nature because the knowledge keeps getting updated. So the most widely used and the simplest solution would be using RAGs. And RAGs are often accompanied with prompt engineering, and they're made agentic, and they have different architectures within that. So let's get into what RAGs can do. So retrieval augmented generation, as their term, retrieval is nothing but your search. Augmentation is, take the results out of your search and augment it into the query that you have, and then generate it with the help of LLM. Okay, so whenever there's a query, you hit your enterprise database, because companies have been maintaining their enterprise database and they're good at search. So you can get the search content that you require and tag it along with the query, not just pass the query directly to the LLM. So you have a good context of what you're passing, and then you pass it to the LLM. So the LLM comes up with a better response this time. So pros of it, it's a simple architecture and safe to adopt. You don't need retraining every time, okay? You have the latest knowledge in your enterprise search, right? Cons might be you're dependent on the model that you're choosing and the search capability. Well, so diving into search happens to be your, the heart of the system of a RAG system. So think of a query that is like you're reading Alice in Wonderland and you're typing, who is Cheshire? And you'll get a good response with that particular query because you're targeting the precision of the search database. But if you don't happen to remember the Cheshire cat in Alice in Wonderland, you vaguely remember something like I know, there was a grinning cat. What was that name? But you want to search and paraphrase that particular thing. Your keyword search doesn't suffice there, And then vector search does well because it understands semantic meaning. So how does vectorization work? You have your data content or whatever you want to throw into your search, embed them into vectors using an embedding model. Okay, so you have a series of vectors for all your chunks of data. Then when the question comes, you embed that particular question too and see what is the closest match. You can use a cosine distance, or there are various algorithms, and you get back the result. That's vectorization. So often, hybrid search happens to be the best because that is what you want. Sometimes you want exact names or terminologies to be matched, and sometimes it's just you're paraphrasing and describing some stuff. So hybrid search works by you could use an RF algorithm to merge it intelligently and give out results. Often when I was testing my Bookmate app also, I've found that it's like 15 to 20% better hit rates and MRR with respect to hybrid search. Okay, coming to the next section of building an assistant. Yeah, an agentic solution might be the best one, right? Your RAGs are not just enough because you need to take actions and you need to make decisions. So comes agents. So they not only can break up the individual steps that we have, but they can also integrate to external APIs and databases and fetch information. They can dynamically decide as to what calls they want to make, and they could evaluate your results and take a different step. And they can also maintain a context, a history of whatever conversations you've had. And all this can be automated using agents. So let's look from Bookmate's perspective, how does an agentic workflow really happen? So when a user types a question or something regarding a book, so based on the question, the agent accepts it and it checks and it decides whether I need to do a search on a single book, or do I need to compare multiple books and give out an idea, or is it just summarization of a book? So, and what it does is, based on that, say it chooses the search capability. So it handovers the buck to the search engine. The search engine comes out with the search results, with a hybrid search or something, and gets back. Now, for some reason, for whatever query that you've done, you get 0 results out of the search query. So the agent can now decide, oh, I can rephrase this particular thing and retry it again. So that I'll do a retry. So it can take that particular step and do a search again. And now when it comes out, you have a good response of, say, 5 search results. You append it with a query, send it to the LLM, and refine and synthesize the answer. This is really interesting. So now you have an agentic workflow. Where did MCP come from? I mean, why MCP, rather? So agents can do all that cool stuff, but maintenance becomes a nightmare at certain point in time. Because when everybody started doing agentic workflows, they started writing their own APIs and stuff. So on the left-hand side, before MCP, everyone who had an LLM or an agentic solution, if they had to talk to each other, they had their own API. So this is going to go crazy with all those M cross N connections. So Anthropic came out with MCP, a standard that can be adopted so that we follow a particular language. So MCP is nothing but a common language that the LLM uses to communicate to the outside world. For it, the outside world is the internet with APIs and websites and data and files, right? So that is what MCP did. With respect to its architecture, it's a simple client-server architecture over JSON RPC2. And you have a host component which manages connections, a client which holds the agentic behavior, and the server which hosts or exposes the AI services. So it has tools, what we call, which like search book or get summary in terms of Bookmate. And it has the resources like databases or files or something, and the prompts where you give how should a particular workflow be treated or decided. Okay, so an example of search book in context of Bookmate is what you see over here. Simple tool. It has a name like search book and description, which tells the agent, okay, when you're looking up for things, you can read the description in the natural language and you can understand and figure out whether to make this particular call or some other compare book or something of that sort. And it also has an input schema as to what inputs it needs to pass it for the tool calling. So query and book identifier are the required fields, and limit is an optional field. So now we have built a system which is agentic, RAG-based solution. That's cool, but how do you know that your system is working? And mind you, all this time, whatever you're building, you're not building with microservices, which are deterministic, but you're dealing with something like non-deterministic. So evaluation and monitoring plays a big role. As I was just developing this project for my learning, I realized how difficult it is to test. You actually don't change any of your code or prompt, but sometimes it gives different results. And it's painful when you're making decisions and you don't figure out what is happening. So how do you lessen the burden or mitigate some of the things? So one of the components is, one of the things that you can do is, in terms of search, is it's the heart of the system. You want to get that right? So you can generate golden data sets, and you can evaluate with hit rate and MRR. Hit rate tells you, say for example, when I search, I get 5 results. So is my expected output there in that 5 results? Then it gives the scoring for that. What MRR does is, in the 5 search results that I've got, is it at the first or the second position, or is it at the top position? Then you get a more scoring. So this is an example like Hegel's philosophy of mind. The hit rate was the 70.3, but MRR was around 58. So this is a good tool to use, and it could look less for you, because the other challenge with is generating your golden set or ground truth, because I've used an LLM to generate it on various questions that people can ask. But if you get real world data, then you can really improve on your search capabilities. And another aspect of evaluation is LLM as a judge. Now, when you first pass your query and you get the final response, you can also ask the LLM to judge how's my answer. And based on that, it can come up with a 0 to 5, or it can just tell poor, adequate, or excellent, something like that. So here's a simple prompt which you can use to generate that particular thing. It just asks you to rate the relevance of the answer with respect to the question, and it scores along with that, right? And the other thing that is very important with respect to observability is having metrics as to, it could be performance metrics with respect to latency, and you can also be getting some user feedback. And a cool tool with respect to distributed tracing is what I've used also as Phoenix. It helps you to trace different calls within the LLM ecosystem, and allows you to test your system. And you could also have automated integration tests, so that you can check for, so if there was a question of comparison, you would expect the agent to do a comparison tool call. So you can do such automated tests by yourself, which will really help you. Because you keep, as you're developing, you keep changing your prompts, and you don't know what is fixing something and what is breaking another thing. Yeah, now let's dive into the actual Bookmate application. Okay. So Bookmate has a multi-layered architecture and clean separation of concerns, pluggable components, and deployable and easy to test, right? The front end provides the ability to ingest books. This can be your React app, substitute with your own thing, Streamlit, or some other thing. And it allows also the ability to ingest books into your library, okay, and chat and also monitor. And the agent over there orchestrates the whole thing. That's the brain of the whole system. So it communicates with the MCP server, where the MCP server exposes the tools, and it communicates with your database or APIs or external APIs, like that. And on to the right, you could make use of other LLMs. I mean, I'm using OpenAI for Bookmate as of now. It could be extended to Gemini or any other thing. You could just substitute. Or you could also have your own LLM that is built and running on your laptop if you want a purely self-hosted solution where your data doesn't go out at all. Okay, coming to the interesting part, demo. Okay, let me shut down. So you can find this particular project in my GitHub repo. I'll show you the link. So if you want to give it a try, go give it. And the first thing, once you download the repo, you might want to make a make build. Are you able to see? Okay. So you can just do a make build and it starts building the whole project. Okay. And I won't go there in the interest of time. I'll just get started with the next command, make up. So this will bring all your services up. So it's just on Docker, and the UI will come up in some time and throw you a link. Yeah. Control click, and voila. There's your Bookmate assistant. A simple interface, Gradio, which is like Streamlit, which most of you have used. So on the left, you have the chat section where you can select a book or the model. On the right-hand side, you have your collection or your catalog or your library. So down you can, chat with it and ask questions. And the next section is about adding a book. So you can add in your new books to your existing list of libraries. And you can give the book name, title, and slug a short name for your book identification. And this is one thing that I want to highlight, a chapter pattern example. So whenever you ingest a book, you can also divide it into chapters. Say Alice in Wonderland had something like chapter dot Roman numerals. You can give that particular pattern and it will automatically divide that and put it into your metadatabase. Why this is required? So that every time you don't send the whole book and summarize it, you have sections, and you can also go and tell, what is the chapter 3 summary, and that'll be very helpful, right? And you can test your pattern and ingest that particular book. And there's a monitoring section where you get the performance metrics of what's the latency, queries, and the self-assessment, and the user feedback, okay, of a particular chat. And there are 4 tools currently for the agent to use. What is getting used? So you can get these metrics within the UI, or you can have another Grafana UI or New Relic or some other things that you can do, okay? And the interesting tool about tracing is Phoenix. This is one of the cool tools which helped me a lot with respect to my testing. So it gives all the conversations, what's happening, that. Before that, I'll just type a question. So I don't have to select a book, and I can directly go and type, say, what is the grenade? Can no, rather. So I give a question, when does Alice meet the grinning cat? And let's look at the logs. If you just want to look at the logs, just do make logs. And okay. So it created a new conversation, and the LLM identified it as the Alice. So the user questioned, what does Alice meet grinning cat? And these are the specific tool calls. It looked for the Alice book and called the search book tool with the query Alice meets the grinning cat, and it identified the slug name, and it found 5 results from the search, which is the hybrid search, and it passed on to an LLM, and the LLM also evaluated the response. So we've had the result. It's pretty cool. So it tells Alice meets the grinning cat known as Cheshire in chapter 6. That's cool, right? And it also describes as to what it happens, and clearly it also shows what is the source, and it does the citation. So Alice is the book, 9 is the chapter, and yeah, 006 is the 6th chunk of it. Okay, and also it finalizes. Now you can, okay, depending on the answer, you can rate it, and I'm sorry. Yeah, and you can submit it. The other thing is, so we made this query. So let's look at what happened behind the tree scenes with respect to the traces. So there was a system prompt, right? You're a book assistant. These are some general good practices of writing system prompts to search tools, and you give the rules around it. Mind you, this prompt, whatever is there, took a lot of iterations over time with lots of testing to come up with this particular thing. And it has the available books, and it does. So when does Alice, and it passes the question, when does Alice meet the grinning cat? And it does this search on that particular tool. And so it gives a nice interface as to what is being tested. And the next one summarizes it with the same thing, but it also gives what the tool returned in response. So it found 5 results from this Alice book, and it also describes the passage that you have been. So a lot of manual testing and verification can be done with this help if your search results are bad, or if you're deviating from what you want to do, and how it has summarized this particular thing. And the final trace shows you that you're evaluating this particular thing and just make a scoring upon that. So it said it's quite adequate. It's not excellent, but yeah, and it gives a reasoning for that particular thing too, right? So we'll go through another one particular query, and let me clear the conversation and ask probably, say, suffering according to Marcus and Hegel. So when I do this particular call, note it goes into the agent. So do I see the user? Yeah. Look at this. So the agent decided to do a multiple search book, and it gave a call to multi-search, and it passed 2 of the books, and it got a response. Yeah. So over here, what you can see is it did a comparison on the views of what Marcus Aurelius had in his book Meditations versus Hegel in his philosophy of mind. And it also cites the sources as to where it has done the searches. So that's a good reference point for somebody who is doing a deep research, or going deep into the subject. Yeah. So that's mostly Bookmate. Give it a try in your spare time. And yeah, let me go back to the slides. Okay, that concludes my demo. So the learnings and challenges that I've had is building an app with I went through a course on LLM Zoom Camp, and I did this. Going through the whole process was easy, but optimizing search was the hardest part. and getting to know the non-deterministic behavior and how do you improve the system with multiple trials was another challenge. So you got to get your evaluation metrics right, automated tests right. So that was one thing. And in the real world, with respect to Bookmate, the challenge is you have applications like Notebook LM from Google, so which allows you to do similar functionality, but for your research purpose, it can take in any document. The challenge over there also is, what if you have audiobooks? You might be, and you don't have the PDF content or a text content. So that happens to be a problem, and that's a problem that is hard to solve. Okay, with open source stuff, it becomes even more problematic, and maybe we can build tools with respect to this as we go further, and make it a truly self-hosted system, which is personal and private for your own usage. The next steps I would like to do with respect to this project is supporting more formats and expanding the ecosystem, put in some security if you're accessing internet-based resources or LLMs outside of your system. And comprehending images. It's not just about novels or storybooks. You can have your technical books, right? We are all engineers, so we can feed in our own content of technical books and get new insights. We might have a lot of questions. Think about it. You can look into the architecture diagrams and get responses, a far better response. And moreover, as the system goes, as a data engineer, I want to do data collection and analysis and improve the system. That's about it. Any time for some Q&A? Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question regarding how to store data in the vector database.
Okay.
So I think the Bookmate, when you upload the book data, I think it's going to embed the book data and store in the vector database, right?
Right.
But before embedding, do you just directly store embed the text, whole text of the book?
Okay.
Or do you pre-process the text data so that it can be more easily retrieved?
Yeah, good question. So all of this happens in the workflow where you had the add ingest book. At the ad book. So you upload your document over here, and you mention the title, and you mention the chapter name or something. So that sort of separates it out into different chapters. And there's also an internal chunking mechanism that has a limit. I think it's 500 if I remember right, for my text document, and it overlaps with 100 content because it's a story or it's a long document, right? So you want to have that overlap so that you have the continuity of what the author is speaking or something of that. So that's your chunk length. So chunks are the basic atomic units that gets embedded and eventually stored in a vector database. So I use Quadrant, which is pretty simple. You can get the Docker version of it. And the code for that also is pretty easy to write. And you can just go use an embedding model in sentence transformers and just store it. Yeah.